I think it's very important that people understand like how important bees are to the ecosystem. If all bees died, all people die. We have to really understand that. Like, there is a gigantic system that's in place. And I'd like to hear you talk about that, because there is a crazy system in place with like how our food is made,
Yes.
how our plants are pollinized. It's all done through these magical little creatures that you're fascinated with.
It is. And one of the things about sharing my work with the world is that I've realized that people don't know a lot
Right.
about bees or how important they are. Bees pollinate 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat. And it's not just, the apple or the almond that you've had today or your cup of coffee. It's the beef that you're eating that grazed on alfalfa. Bees are responsible for that. And, when our bee populations are healthy, that's a good sign for our planet, because bees are pollinating. Over 75% of plants need bees for pollination. And our world would look so different without honeybees and the over 20,000 species of bees that do so much work for our planet. And, there's a lot of other beekeepers out there like me trying to help bees and doing wonderful work for bees. But I do feel like, beekeeping is a really noble profession, because you're helping these creatures that do so much work for us. And, if we want our grocery shelves to look like they do now, and to have a diverse diet, we need to treat our bees better and make sure our bee populations are healthy.
I read something about more than one thing, about cell phone signals interfering with the way bees communicate. Do you know what that is?
I have heard a little bit about that, or I've heard about that years ago. I haven't heard about that recently, and I don't know if there's any merit to that.
Oh, okay. See if we can find something on that. Because there was some confusion as to whether or not bees were behaving differently as cell phone use became more widespread and more towers were up. And I would just imagine that signal, whatever that is, that's in the air. Obviously, we can't detect cell phone signals.
Right.
You have to look at your phone to see if you have a signal. But whatever they are able to do is obviously so different than
Yes.
the kind of senses that we have. And I think the speculation was that, or maybe theory, was that there is something about these signals that is interfering with the way bees communicate.
There could be, but that's certainly not the biggest problem bees face, Right. So I don't think that's a challenge that bees are facing right now. I could be wrong, but it's not a challenge as a beekeeper I face, or I see a problem with my bees in cell phone towers. I see a problem with my bees not having enough food, and with pesticides and industrial agriculture. So
what is industrial agriculture doing to bees?
It's killing our bees. It's we're putting these large monocrops. We're putting acres and acres of the same thing that need bees to pollinate. For example, almonds. Almonds are almost entirely dependent on bees for pollination, and so we would have no almonds if we didn't have bees. And we're shipping our bees across the country, to pollinate the almond crops in California, and then maybe up to the apples in New York. And we're putting them in these areas where they only have one food source, which isn't healthy for them or for anybody. They only have it for a short period of time. So, they can only collect food there for a little while, and there may or may not have pesticides sprayed on this food that the bees are collecting. But at the end of the day, bees weren't made to be shipped on, or bees shouldn't be shipped on semi-trucks across the country to pollinate these places where there's just one thing living, and we're forcing the bees to pollinate, this one crop.
So that's how they do it. They bring in bees.
The way that most beekeepers earn a living is through commercial pollination services. So we need bees for food like almonds, and plants are pollinated one of two ways. They're self-pollinating or they're cross-pollinating, and they need some help to reproduce and to fertilize. And bees are the best pollinator our planet has. So when bees go out and collect food for themselves, they're pollinating plants and making sure plants are reproducing. And without bees, we wouldn't have, many, many foods. But it's not just us. It's so many creatures who rely on bees for their food system as well.
So when a beehive, when some beekeeper brings, like, say there's an almond plantation and they bring these bees in, where are they getting these bees?
From, commercial beekeepers who keep them most often in the South will overwinter the bees in the South where, like right now our bees can still go out and forage, but in colder climates it's, the bees will stay in the hive. So I have beekeeping friends in Colorado who don't see their bees for months on end because if it's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit or below, the bees won't leave the hive and they're just clustering inside. So, we'll have beekeepers from all around the country ship their bees and do this pollination circuit. And, they'll come from all different areas, Texas, California. We'll have some beekeepers. Florida is a big place for beekeepers.
And what are they feeding their bees? Like, how are they keeping their bees alive when they're doing this?
They're pollinating the almonds, so that is food for the bees.
Once they get there. But when they acquire them in order to ship them, how are they doing that?
As beekeepers, we're supplementing food for the bees all the time because there simply isn't enough. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges facing bees is habitat loss, and that extends. It's not just honeybees, but it's, the over 20,000 species of bees that we share this planet with. They're all feeling the effects of not having enough food or not having a diverse enough diet. So we will supplement the bees' feed with sugar water when needed, and it's trash. I mean, it's just like feeding your kids McDonald's every day,
What is the difference between what they get? Because pollen, obviously, you were talking about the protein.
Sure.
Is there a way to give them something artificial or supplement something exogenous that is akin to pollen?
There is a pollen substitute. Yep. Yeah? It's mostly made of like a soy powder, but it's all.
That's not good for them either?
It's not natural food. It's not what the bees are meant to have. I mean, these creatures have been around so long. It's for us to come along and start feeding them artificial food.
So is it like human beings where if you give them this artificial stuff, you see a decline in lifespan and a decline in overall longevity and robustness of health?
I don't know if any studies have been done that have exclusively fed bees artificial food. Bees need natural food to live. We wouldn't want bees to live on exclusively artificial food. You shouldn't have bees in that area.
But we have people that live like that.
But we certainly want to keep the bees as healthy as possible, and these sugar water diets are not what's healthiest for the bees, and they know best, and so let's let them forage naturally, but they need to have things